The low growl of the Porsche 911 GT3 was a comforting sound as Ethan Blake carved his way down the moonlit Pacific Coast Highway. The road, a black ribbon clinging to the cliffs with the dark ocean on one side and towering redwoods on the other, was his sanctuary. It was where he went to outrun the immense pressure of being the founder and CEO of Blake Industries, one of Silicon Valley's titans. Tonight, after a particularly brutal board meeting, he craved this isolation. The digital display flickered at 75 millipores, a speed that would have most drivers gripping the wheel, but for Ethan, it was a state of zen. His reflexes, sharpened on private racetracks and in high-stakes corporate battles, kept the German supercar leashed and responsive. The plush Alcantara interior swallowed the silence of the night, pierced only by the persistent buzz of notifications on his phone, which he pointedly ignored. That was when a glint of metal in his rearview mirror snagged his focus. He instinctively eased off the gas, his mind, wired to spot market inconsistencies and coding flaws, zeroing in on the anomaly. About 50 yards back, tucked into the shadows of the massive trees, sat a worn-out silver Honda on the shoulder of the road. Ethan hesitated, his logical brain screaming at him to keep driving. A deserted stretch of PCH in the middle of the night was not the place to play Good Samaritan. But something pulled at him, a gut feeling he couldn't shake. Maybe it was the car's odd angle against the guardrail, or the total lack of hazard lights. Or maybe it was a deeper, resonant echo of a past he fought daily to keep buried. Damn it, he cursed under his breath, smoothly braking and maneuvering the Porsche to a stop a safe distance ahead of the stranded vehicle. His fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the steering wheel as he assessed the scene. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m., the outside temperature a brisk 54 degrees. This was no night to be stuck out here. He pulled a heavy-duty flashlight from the glove compartment, a precaution his executive assistant, Emily, called paranoia, but a habit he'd kept since the days when he had no one to rely on but himself. He stepped out, the cold, salty air hitting him like a physical blow, making him pull his custom-tailored blazer tighter around his frame. As he approached the Honda, his bespoke leather shoes crunching on the gravel, a sense of wrongness intensified. The car was caked in grime, as if it had been sitting there for days, not hours. The windows were fogged over, and there was no sign of life inside. That's when he heard it, a sound so faint it could have been the wind whispering through the redwoods. But it wasn't. It was a sob, a child's sob. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. He aimed the powerful beam of the flashlight through the rear window, and his blood went cold. Curled up in the back seat was a little girl, no older than 6, cradling what looked like a baby. "Oh my God," he breathed, his hand already on the door handle. It was unlocked. The little girl flinched as the door swung open, her wide, terrified eyes reflecting the bright light. She was grimy and clearly exhausted, but what stunned Ethan was the fierce, protective way she held the infant, like a lioness shielding her cub. "Hey, it's all right," Ethan said softly, crouching to get on her level. "My name is Ethan. Are you hurt?" The girl shook her head, but her lips trembled. The baby in her arms stirred, letting out a soft whimper of distress. "Where are your parents?" Ethan asked, though a sick feeling in his stomach already told him the answer. There was a silent desperation in the girl's eyes that felt terrifyingly familiar. They wouldn't wake up," the girl whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. "I tried to wake them, but they just—" The scene slammed into Ethan's mind with the force of a physical blow. Him, 8 years old, shaking his mother's limp body on a threadbare couch, a needle on the floor, the suffocating panic, and the crushing weight of abandonment. He forced himself back to the present. "How long have you been here?" he asked, his eyes now taking in the empty snack wrappers scattered around the car. The girl had clearly been foraging through their luggage. 2 days, I think, she answered, her gaze never leaving his, sizing him up with a solemn wisdom that didn't belong on a child's face. Sophia was crying a lot, but now she's quieter. Ethan felt his chest tighten, the reality hitting him that this small child had cared for her baby sister, alone, for 2 days. He was already reaching for his cell phone to call 911 when a second thought stopped him cold. The moment the authorities arrived, these children would be swallowed by the system. The same system he knew intimately, the one that had forged his childhood in fire and neglect. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice steady as he dialed AA. She replied, shifting the baby in her arms. "And this is my sister Sophia. She's 8 months old." While waiting for the dispatcher, Ethan observed the two sisters. Despite the fear etched on AA's face, she had an astonishing composure. Sophia slept on, apparently well cared for, under the most horrific circumstances. 911, what's your emergency? Ethan quickly relayed the situation and his location, a remote mile marker on the PCH. The operator promised police and paramedics were en route, but confirmed it would be at least a 20-minute drive. "It's really cold out here," Ethan said after hanging up. "Would you like to wait in my car? It's warmer, and I have water and some snacks." Ava hesitated, a lifetime of warnings written on her young face. "Mommy said never to go with strangers." A sad smile touched Ethan's lips. "Your mom was right, but look, I'll leave the door open, and you can see me the whole time also." He pulled out his wallet and showed her his driver's license. "Here's my name and photo. I'm not a stranger anymore, right?" Something in his tone or the look in his eyes must have broken through her fear, because she gave a slow, hesitant nod. Taking care not to jostle Sophia, she allowed Ethan to help her from the car. The short walk to the Porsche was filled only by the crunch of their steps and the baby's soft breathing. Ethan cranked the heat as soon as they were inside, the high-tech, luxurious cockpit of the sports car, a surreal backdrop for its two tiny passengers. "Are you thirsty?" he asked, retrieving a bottle of water from the glove box. Ava accepted it with small, trembling hands. Ethan noticed her fingernails were broken and dirty, likely from her desperate attempts to care for the baby. As Ava took small sips, Ethan was hit with another flashback, this time of his first night at the Hopewell Children's Center. The fear, the confusion, the overwhelming loneliness. But he'd been older, stronger. These girls were so fragile. "AA," he began gently, "can you tell me what happened to your parents?" The girl lowered the bottle, tears welling in her eyes as she fought to keep them in. "We were coming back from visiting Grandma," she started, her voice shaking. "It was raining really hard. Daddy said we should stop at a motel, but Mommy wanted to get home because Sophia needs to sleep in her crib." She paused, clutching her sister closer. Ethan waited, his own heart aching with a familiar pain. "I saw big lights coming, and then everything spun really fast," she continued in a whisper. "When it stopped spinning, I called Mommy and Daddy, but they didn't answer. There was so much blood, and I got scared." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut for a second, steadying himself. "You were very brave, AA," he said finally. "You took such good care of your baby sister." "I tried to get help," she said, the tears finally spilling down her cheeks, "but Mommy's phone was broken and no car stopped. I found Sophia's diapers in the suitcase, and there were some cookies and water, but she's hungry. I know she is." As if on cue, Sophia began to stir, her small mouth working as a cry began to build. Ethan could hear the distant wail of sirens, but they were still minutes away. "Hey, AA," he said, an idea sparking. "Do you think Sophia would take powdered formula? I've got an emergency kit in the trunk with some basic supplies." Ava's eyes widened with a flicker of hope. "Do you have some? She's been on formula since she was born." Mommy couldn't. Ethan was already out of the car. He returned moments later with a compact emergency bag, another one of his paranoid habits that was now proving its worth. Inside was a single-serving packet of baby formula and a sterile, sealed baby bottle. "I always keep a fully stocked first aid kit," he explained, mixing the formula with bottled water, how you never know when you might need it. Ava watched his every move, her guard still up, but a visible layer of tension easing from her small shoulders. When Ethan offered the prepared bottle, she carefully tested a drop on her own wrist, a gesture that startled him. "Mommy always does that to see if it's too hot," she explained, apparently satisfied. As Sophia drank hungrily, the sirens grew louder. Soon the dark woods were alive with dancing red and blue lights, and Ethan felt Ava tense beside him. "It's okay," he reassured her. "They're here to help us medics, to check if you and Sophia are okay, and officers to take care of everything." "Are they going to take us away?" Ava asked, her fear a palpable thing in the small car. Before Ethan could formulate an answer, 3 police cruisers and an ambulance swarmed the scene. What followed was a blur of controlled chaos. Paramedics assessing the girls, officers asking questions, the crackle of radios, the flash of lights. Ethan watched it all with a suffocating sense of déjà vu, only this time he was on the other side. He wasn't the terrified child being led away by strangers. He was an adult with power, with resources, with the ability to change the outcome. When a paramedic suggested taking the girls to the hospital for a full checkup, Ava panicked, her small hand gripping the sleeve of Ethan's blazer. "Please don't leave," she begged, her large eyes pleading. "Please." Ethan looked from the paramedic to the lead police officer. "I'm going with them," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. It was the same tone he used to close billion-dollar deals. "Sir, only family members can," the paramedic started, but Ethan cut him off. "I found these children, I'm responsible for them until this situation is properly resolved," he said, his voice firm. "Besides, I'm Ethan Blake, CEO of Blake Industries. I'm sure we can sort out any paperwork once the girls are safe at the hospital." The name worked its magic. The officers exchanged looks, and the paramedic just nodded. Within minutes, Ethan was in the back of the ambulance next to Ava, who still held Sophia as the medics monitored them. During the ride, Ethan felt how Ava leaned into him, as if he were an anchor in the storm that had become her life. Sophia, full and warm, had fallen asleep again, her tiny face finally peaceful. A memory surfaced, him in a sterile hospital room, alone and terrified, waiting for a savior who never came. He'd had to save himself, building an empire from nothing, turning his pain into ambition. But now, looking at these 2 sisters, one protecting the other with a strength beyond her years, the other sleeping in perfect trust, Ethan felt a profound shift inside him. A connection he couldn't rationalize, a responsibility he couldn't ignore. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, as much to himself as to them, "I promise." And for the first time in his adult life, Ethan Blake made a promise that wasn't based on a calculated risk or a business strategy. It was a promise from the heart. The hospital was hushed and calm when they arrived, as if the building itself understood the fragility of its 2 new patients. The emergency staff was ready, and Ethan watched with a heavy heart as they began examining Lily and Emma. "They're dehydrated," explained a kind-faced doctor, Dr. Peterson, according to her badge. "But all things considered, they're surprisingly well. AA did an amazing job taking care of her sister." Ethan nodded, watching through the glass as a nurse gently cleaned Lily's face. The girl's eyes never left Emma, who was being examined in an adjacent crib. "Mr. Blake," a deep voice called. It was one of the officers. "We need to discuss the situation." Over the next few minutes, the officer laid out the grim details. The accident, caused by a sudden rainstorm and a patch of black ice, had sent the Millers' car skidding off the road. David and Sarah Miller had died on impact. Miraculously, the sisters in the back had survived with minor injuries. "What about relatives?" Ethan asked, though he already felt the familiar dread creeping in. "We looking into it?" But so far, the officer consulted his notes. The maternal grandmother passed away 6 months ago. That was who they were visiting. The father was an only child, parents deceased. The mother had a sister, but she died 2 years ago in a car accident as well. Ethan closed his eyes, the story of his own life bleeding into theirs. When he opened them, his course was set. "Officer," he said, his voice imbued with a new, unshakable resolve, "I want to begin the process to obtain temporary custody of these girls." The officer stared at him, stunned. "Mr. Blake, with all due respect, there are procedures investigations." "I'm aware," Ethan interjected gently, "and I intend to follow them, but those two little girls just lost everything, and I refuse to let them face the system alone, not when I can do something about it." At that moment, a soft cry came from the treatment room. Emma was awake and fussy. Before a nurse could react, Lily was at her crib, whispering soothingly. Ethan watched the scene, feeling a protective instinct he never knew he had flared to life. His phone buzzed in his pocket, another urgent demand from his company, another crisis needing his attention. For the first time, Ethan Blake completely ignored the call of his empire. There were more important decisions to be made, a promise to keep, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to heal not just two small orphans, but the wounded boy he had carried inside himself for so long. "It's going to be okay," he repeated quietly, watching the two sisters. And this time, the words were a vow, a conviction that some encounters are not random, but the start of something far greater than oneself. Ethan stood in his 20th floor corner office at Blake Industries, gazing out as the morning sun painted the San Francisco skyline in hues of gold. His mind, however, was miles away, in a hospital room where Lily and Emma slept. 3 days had passed since that night on the PCH, and each minute had brought a new legal or logistical challenge. Mr. Blake, his executive assistant, Emily, announced from the doorway, "The social worker has arrived." He turned, instinctively straightening his tie. "Send her in." Ashley Carter walked in with a purposeful stride, a thick file tucked under her arm. Her intelligent eyes did a quick sweep of the expansive office before landing on Ethan, her gaze professional and assessing, a look he knew well from years of sizing people up. "Mr. Blake," she began, her voice crisp and clear, "I'm Ashley Carter, assigned to the Mitchell sisters case. We need to discuss some urgent matters." Ethan gestured to a chair. "Please call me Ethan, and yes, we have a lot to discuss." Ashley opened her file, a meticulously organized stack of papers. "First, I must inform you that we've confirmed there are no close living relatives for the girls. Their situation is," she searched for the word, "delicate." The word hit Ethan like a physical blow, dragging him back through time. 23 years ago, 9-year-old Ethan sat on a hard plastic chair, his feet dangling far above the floor. The same word, delicate, had been used by the adults deciding his fate, as if he were a piece of fragile glass. "The boy's situation is delicate," they'd said. "No relatives, no resources." The scent of industrial cleaner at the Hopewell Children's Center burned in his nostrils, mingling with the ever-present smell of overcooked vegetables that seemed to cling to the walls. His entire world, a worn backpack and a tattered copy of a sci-fi novel, sat at his feet. "Present, Ethan," Ashley's voice pulled him back. "Are you all right?" He blinked, shaking off the ghost of the past. "Yes? Sorry you were saying about the girl situation?" Ashley observed him for a moment before she continued. "There's a standard process in these cases. The children are normally placed in a temporary institution while we search for a suitable adoptive family." "No," the word shot out, sharper than he intended. "I'm sorry, but I can't allow that. I want to immediately begin the process to obtain temporary custody of them." Ashley leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. "Mr. Blake Ethan, I understand your desire to help, but there are procedures that must be followed. A full background check, psychological evaluation, home visits." "Do them all," Ethan cut in, rising to pace before the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Today, if possible, I have resources, a safe environment, and more importantly, I understand exactly what those girls are going through." He turned to face her, and something in his eyes must have resonated, because she paused. "You have experience with the adoption system?" she asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of the confession heavy on his tongue. I grew up in the Hopewell Children's Center from the age of 9 to 16. My mom died of an overdose when I was 8. My dad never knew him. 20 years ago, 12-year-old Ethan perched on the windowsill of the boys' dormitory, watching the rain streak down the grimy glass. He traced invisible patterns, trying to block out the sounds of a new boy crying in the bunk below. They all cried the first few nights. Ethan hadn't. He'd vowed never to cry again after that first week. Instead, he channeled everything into his studies, into his plans, into his dreams of the day he would finally be free. The other kids called him a machine. The staff said he was detached. Ethan knew it wasn't detachment. It was survival. "Present Hopewell?" Ashley asked, a flicker of recognition in her voice. "I interned there a few years ago. It was a tough place, still is, from what I hear." Ethan returned to his desk. "That's why I can't let AA and Sophia go to an institution. They need to stay together, to have stability, to have someone who understands," Ashley finished for him, her voice softer. Ethan nodded, pulling up his tablet. With a few swift gestures, he projected a series of files onto the large wall monitor. "I've already made some preparations. My legal team is working on the necessary paperwork. I've had an entire wing of my home adapted for the girls, a bedroom, a nursery, a play area. I've hired a private pediatrician and a nurse specializing in infant care." Ashley stared at the architectural blueprints and detailed plans, her expression a mix of professional skepticism and personal awe. "You did all this in 3 days. Actually, in 36 hours, he corrected. Time is critical here. Every day that passes is another day those girls live in uncertainty and fear. 18 years ago, get up, Blake. The night monitor's harsh voice echoed through the dorm. Nightmares again. 14-year-old Ethan sat bolt upright in his narrow bed, his body slick with a cold sweat. It was always the same dream, his mother on the couch, the needle, the crushing silence of death. "I'm fine," he mumbled, his hands gripping the thin blanket. "Want to talk about it?" the monitor asked, more out of routine than concern. "No?" Ethan knew talking was useless. The only thing that helped was the plan. Study, work, build. Create something that no one could ever take from him. "Present Ethan," Ashley's voice broke through again. "You need to understand, even with all the resources in the world, there are aspects of this process that can't be rushed, especially the emotional impact on the girls." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Believe me, I understand the emotional impact better than anyone. That's precisely why I'm doing this every minute that goes by." His phone vibrated, a frantic message from the board. He ignored it. "Your investors must not be happy about this distraction," Ashley noted. Ethan gave a short, bitter laugh. "They'll survive. I built this company from the ground up, turned a college dorm idea into a tech empire. If they don't like my priorities now, well." He let the threat hang in the air. Ashley studied him for a long, silent moment before gathering her papers. "I'll need a complete list of references, detailed medical history, financial records." "Emily has everything ready," Ethan said, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "So you'll help us?" "I'll do my job," Ashley replied diplomatically, "which is to ensure the girls' best interests. If you really want to do this, you need to understand. This is going to be an intensive process. Surprise visits, interviews, evaluations." "Whatever it takes," Ethan vowed. Ashley nodded, rising to leave. "One last thing. How much do the girls know about your plans?" Ethan hesitated. "I haven't discussed it with them yet. Ava is adjusting, and Sophia." He smiled faintly. "Well, she has her own opinions on everything." The night before, Emma's cries had echoed through the hospital ward at 3 a.m. Ethan, who had insisted on staying, was trying desperately to soothe her while Lily slept fitfully nearby. "Shh, it's okay," he whispered, awkwardly rocking the crying baby. "Are you hungry, Sleepy? Please give me a clue." The night nurse watched with a mixture of amusement and pity. "First time with babies." "That obvious?" he asked, still trying to find a comfortable hold. "You'll learn," she smiled, showing him a better technique. "We all do." "Present, I need to talk to AA today," Ashley informed him, pausing at the door, alone. Ethan felt a protective pang, but nodded. "Sure, can I at least say goodbye to them first?" Ashley paused, turning back. For a moment, her professional facade slipped. "You know, when I first read about this case, a tech billionaire wanting to adopt 2 orphans, I was skeptical. I thought it would be just another wealthy man trying to polish his public image." "And now?" Ethan asked. "Now," she gave a small, genuine smile. "Now I'm going to do my job and hope you are exactly who you seem to be." After she left, Ethan returned to the window. Below, the city hummed with its usual frantic energy, oblivious to the life-altering drama playing out above. His phone buzzed again, Emily reporting that the investors were demanding an emergency meeting. He typed a quick response. "Reschedule for tomorrow. Today, I have more important commitments." Grabbing his coat, Ethan headed for the hospital. There were countless obstacles ahead, but for the first time since he'd walked out of Hopewell, he felt he was doing something that truly mattered. In the elevator, another memory surfaced. His last night at the center, 16 years old, vowing to one day return and make a difference. He'd always imagined it would be through donations, new facilities, structural change. Fate, it seemed, had a more personal plan. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Lily awake, coloring in a notebook a nurse had given her. Emma was sleeping peacefully in her crib. "Hey," he said softly from the doorway. Lily looked up, and for a fleeting second, her face lit up with a look of pure, unadulterated hope. That was all the confirmation Ethan needed. He was doing the right thing. Now he just had to convince the rest of the world. "I don't want to go." Lily's voice was a small, determined whisper as she clung to the grand staircase railing in Ethan's mansion. It was her first day at her new school, and the raw fear in her eyes was a physical blow to Ethan's heart. "I know it's scary," he said, kneeling down to her level, still in the impeccable Italian suit he wore for the board meeting scheduled for later. "But remember what we talked about. You're the bravest girl I know." Emma, who had seamlessly adapted to her new life, babbled happily from the arms of their nanny, Maria, a warm, middle-aged woman Ethan had hired after a rigorous vetting process. "What if," Lily hesitated, chewing on her lower lip, "what if the other kids don't like me?" Ethan felt a familiar ache in his chest. He knew that fear all too well. "It's impossible not to like you," he smiled, adjusting her small pink backpack. "Besides, I have a surprise for after school." Lily's eyes brightened slightly. "What surprise?" "Well, then it wouldn't be a surprise, would it?" He winked, finally coaxing a tiny smile from her. "Latin, make a deal. You do your best today, and then we'll talk about anything you want." "Deal." Lily considered this with the gravity of a CEO mulling a merger, her small brow furrowed. "Anything." "Scout's honor," Ethan promised, raising his hand. "You were never a scout," Lily pointed out, a bit more relaxed. Ethan feigned a gasp. "How do you know? You don't even know how to tie your shoelaces properly," she explained with the flawless logic of a 6-year-old. "I saw you struggling with your sneakers yesterday." The sound of Maria's suppressed laughter made them turn. The nanny quickly covered it with a cough, but her eyes were twinkling with amusement. "Well," Ethan said, standing and smoothing his suit, "I guess I've been found out, but my promise still stands." The moment was broken by the sound of a car horn. The driver had arrived with the secure school transport Ethan insisted upon. "Time to go, sweetheart," Maria said gently, still holding Emma. Lily took a deep breath that seemed too large for her little body and nodded. Ethan walked her to the van, where a friendly driver waited. "Remember," he said, just before closing the door, "you're stronger than you think." As the van pulled away, Ethan checked his phone. 15 missed calls from his partners and a text from Ashley Carter requesting an urgent meeting. "Mr. Blake," Maria called from the doorway. "Ms. Carter just arrived." Ethan found Ashley in his office, looking at a framed photo of Lily and Emma he'd recently placed on his desk. "They look happier," she commented as he entered. "They're adjusting," Ethan replied, motioning for her to sit. "Sophia's already ruling the house, and Ava, well, today's her first day of school." Jessica nodded, taking a seat. "That's what we need to talk about," the press found out. Ethan froze mid-stride. "How?" "Apparently someone at the school leaked the info," Ashley said, handing him a tablet. "The Tech Times is running a cover story, The Billionaire and the Orphans redemption tale or marketing stunt." Ethan scrolled through the article, his jaw tightening with every word. "They can't do this. The girls are minors. There are laws." "They plan to skirt them by focusing on you," Ashley explained. "Your past at Hopewell, your meteoric rise in tech, and," she hesitated, "some controversial decisions early in your career." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Mark, your former partner, gave a lengthy interview," Ashley confirmed. "He specifically mentions the 2015 incident with Project Aurora." Ethan stood abruptly, turning to the window. Project Chimera had been his first major success and his first major ethical compromise. At the time, it had felt like a necessary evil. "Will this affect the adoption process?" he asked, his back still to her. "Honestly, yes," Ashley replied, "but not necessarily in a negative way, depending on how you handle it." Ethan turned, surprised. "What do you mean?" Ashley stood, her expression serious but compassionate. "Over the past few weeks, I've observed how you interact with the girls I've seen, how you've rearranged your entire life for them, how genuinely committed you are to their well-being. That carries a lot of weight. But transparency is crucial in this process," she finished. "If there's something in your past that could affect the girls, I need to know now." Ethan closed his eyes, the ghosts of Project Chimera swirling in his memory. The stolen code, the manipulated data, the ruthless drive to crush the competition. "I was a different person then," he began, but was cut off by the sound of small feet pounding down the hallway. "Ethan, Ethan," Lily's voice cried out, followed by heart-wrenching sobs. He rushed to the door to find her in the middle of the hall, her face streaked with tears. "Hey, what happened? Why aren't you at school?" I couldn't," she sobbed, launching herself into his arms. "I got scared. I asked them to bring me back." Ethan scooped her up, feeling her small body tremble. "It's all right," he whispered, locking eyes with Ashley over Lily's head. "It's okay to be scared." "But you said I'm strong," Lily murmured into his shoulder. "And you are," he confirmed, carrying her back into the office. "Being strong doesn't mean never being afraid. It means facing your fear, even if it takes a few tries." Ashley watched them, her professional demeanor softening. Ethan sat on the couch with Lily in his lap, completely oblivious to his expensive suit, now decorated with tear stains and a smudge of glitter. "Want to know a secret?" he asked gently. Lily nodded, still sniffling. "I was scared to go to school too when I was little." That got her attention. "You?" "No, why?" When she shook her head, he continued, "Because like you, I lost my parents when I was a kid." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" he confirmed, noticing Ashley discreetly making a note. "I lived in a place with other kids who also didn't have parents, and every day I was terrified to go to school, afraid the other kids would find out, afraid they'd treat me differently." "What did you do?" Lily asked, captivated. "Well, first I cried a lot," he admitted with a small smile. "Then I learned I didn't have to be ashamed of my story, that it made me special, not different." "Am I special?" she asked, her voice small. "You're the most special of all," Ethan promised, "and you know something else, that fear I felt helped me create something important. Now." "What?" Ethan exchanged a quick look with Ashley before continuing. "I'm starting a new project, a foundation to help other kids like us so they never have to feel alone or scared." Lily's eyes lit up. "Can I help?" "Of course," he smiled. In fact, you already are. You showed me how important it is to have someone who understands us, who cares for us." Lily seemed to ponder this deeply. After a moment, she straightened up in Ethan's lap, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I think I want to try going to school again tomorrow," she declared. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked gently. She nodded. "But can you tell me more stories about when you were little later?" "As many as you want," he promised. Ashley cleared her throat, a gentle reminder of her presence. "A sweetheart. How about we go see Sophia while Ethan changes for his meeting?" Only then did Ethan notice his disheveled appearance, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Lily gave him one last squeeze before following Ashley out. At the door, Ashley paused. "About our earlier conversation, I think I've seen enough for today, but we still need to discuss that issue." Ethan nodded. The past would have to be faced, but for now he had a board meeting to conquer, and more importantly, a promise of stories to keep. Later, as he was changing, his phone rang. It was Mark. "Have you seen the news?" came the familiar, grating voice. "Old times always come back to haunt us, huh, Ethan? What do you want, Mark? Just a talk for old time's sake. How about tomorrow at the club we can discuss arrangements?" Ethan glanced out the window at Lily playing with Emma in the garden, Ashley supervising them. "Tomorrow won't work," he answered. "I have an important commitment with my family." He hung up before Mark could reply, a strange sense of peace settling over him despite the veiled threat. Some fights were worth having, and he had finally found his. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings and calls, but Ethan kept his promise. That evening, perched on the edge of Lily's bed, he told her stories of his childhood, the good parts, the funny parts, the parts that showed that even in darkness, there is hope. When she finally slept, he lingered for a moment, watching her breathe. In the doorway, Ashley, who had stayed late for a final meeting, watched him. "You know," she said quietly as he stepped out, "when I first took this case, I had my doubts a billionaire tech mogul wanting to adopt 2 orphans. It sounded like a movie script." "And now?" Ethan asked, gently closing Lily's door. "Now," she smiled, "now I think those girls hit the jackpot, and so did you." Later, alone in his study, Ethan began to write, not code or business proposals, but the outline for his new foundation. At the top of the page he wrote a simple name, Project Lily and Emma, Building Bridges to the Future. The past could wait. The future was just beginning. Dawn broke gently over the Adams mansion. Ryan had been awake since 5 a.m., answering emails on his iPad while watching Sophia sleep in her crib. It was a habit he'd developed in the last few weeks. These quiet moments before the household stirred gave him a sense of peace he'd never experienced in his previous life. The little one breathed softly, her tiny hands occasionally twitching as she dreamed Ryan still marveled at how something so small could occupy such a large space in his heart. The sound of light footsteps warned him of Monica's arrival. As always, she came in before sunrise. "Good morning, Mr. Adams," she whispered, setting her purse down in the corner. "You really should get more sleep. Today's board meeting will be long." Ryan nodded, but didn't move. There was something hypnotic about watching Sophia sleep apiece. He was reluctant to break. Then he noticed she was stirring differently, her tiny muscles contracting in a way he recognized Monica. He called softly. I think she's about to before he could finish. Sophia opened her eyes and, with surprising determination for someone so small, grabbed the crib rails and pulled herself up. It wasn't the first time she'd done that, but her movements today seemed more deliberate. "Look at that!" Monica smiled, approaching the crib. Someone woke up determined. Ryan already had his phone in hand. Recording in recent days, Sophia had been showing signs she was about to take her first steps, and he refused to miss the moment. "Come to Mommy, sweetie, come on." Monica encouraged, using the affectionate term she'd naturally adopted. Sophia wobbled, holding on to the crib rails. Her bright eyes filled with determination. The sound of AA's alarm drifted down the hallway, followed by familiar little feet running across the hardwood floor. Seconds later, she appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair a messy bird's nest. Is she going to walk?" Ava asked excitedly, running over to the crib. "Sophia, come to your sister," as if waiting for that specific encouragement. Sophia let go of the rails and took a hesitant step. Ryan held his breath, the phone shaking slightly as he filmed another step, then another, unsteady, unsure, but definitely walking. She did it. AA squealed, jumping for joy. Sophia's walking the moment was interrupted by Ryan's phone. It was Sarah, his executive assistant, likely reminding him of the video call that was set to start in 15 minutes. Mr. Adams, Monica saw his hesitation. The meeting, they can wait. He decided, putting the phone away, he wasn't missing this for the world. For the next 20 minutes, they watched and celebrated each wobbly step Sophia took, who seemed bolder with every try. AA provided a running commentary worthy of a sports announcer, making them all laugh with her enthusiasm. Only when Monica gently reminded Ava she needed to get ready for school. Did reality reassert itself? Ryan glanced at his watch and sighed. He was now 40 minutes late for the video call Daddy AA called. As he stepped out of the room, the words still knew enough to make his heart skip a beat. "Will you be home when I get back from school today?" The question carried the weight of broken promises before, of nights when meetings ran, past bedtime, of missed moments he could never get back. "I'll do my best, Princess," he began, but the disappointment in her eyes made him stop. "You know what? I will be here." "I promise." The smile she gave him in return was worth more than any contract he might sign today. In his office, the laptop screen showed a dozen missed calls and a flood of urgent messages. Sarah had sent 3 emails marked, "Urgent, Mr. Adam." Her voice was tight when he finally answered, "The investors are furious. Mr. Marshall threatened to sell his shares if you don't show up to the meeting at 2. "Sarah," he said calmly, "how long have you worked for me?" 8 years, sir, and in all that time have you ever seen me truly happy?" A pause on the other end. "Not until recently." "Sir, exactly reschedule the meeting with Marshall for tomorrow and clear my schedule after 3. I'm picking. AA up from school today, but sir, the board meeting can wait. My daughter can't." The words slipped out naturally. Now without hesitation, there was a moment of silence before Sarah answered more softly. "I'll reorganize your calendar." The morning became a sequence of video calls and emails, interspersed with quick visits to the girls' room to witness more of Sophia's attempts at walking. Ryan realized he was smiling more than in all his previous years. Combined during one of these pauses, Jessica arrived wearing the expression he had come to recognize as a warning sign. "Trouble ahead. We need to talk," she said, closing the office door behind her. Kevin gave another interview. The name of his ex-partner was enough to wipe the smile off Ryan's face. He took the tablet Jessica offered, reading the headline that would change everything scandal at Adams Tech CEO, stole code that built his empire. He's willing to present evidence. Jessica continued, taking a seat across from him. Emails, code, records, witnesses. "Can't," Ryan muttered more to himself than to her. "I modified all the records, erased the traces." The words escaped before he could stop them, and he saw their impact on Jessica's face. It was the first time he'd openly admitted what he had done. "Ryan," she began, her professional tone barely masking something else. "As your social worker, is that what you are?" He interrupted, years of pent-up tension finally surfacing. "Just my social worker." The silence that followed was deafening through the closed door. They could hear Sophia's laughter and Monica's gentle encouragement from upstairs. "No," Jessica finally replied, her voice softer. "No, I'm not just your social worker, and that's exactly why this is so complicated." Before Ryan could respond, his phone rang. It was AA's school. His heart clenched at the sight of the number on the caller ID. "Mr. Adams," the principal's voice was tense. "There's been an incident. We need you to come here immediately." The drive to the school was tense, and silent Jessica insisting on going. With him, Ryan ran 2 red lights. His knuckles, white against the steering wheel. They found AA in the principal's office, curled up in a chair that was too big for her, her uniform stained with juice and silent tears streaming down her face. "What happened?" Ryan demanded, kneeling beside her. "Some students saw the story about you online." The principal explained, visibly uncomfortable. "They started picking on Ava during recess when she tried to defend herself. They said, 'You're not really my dad.'" Ava sobbed, finally breaking her silence, "that you're just pretending to like us to look good on TV." Ryan's heart broke. He had feared something like this since the media found out, but the reality was 1,000 times worse than any scenario. He'd imagined Ava look at me, he asked softly, taking her small hands in his. "Remember what we talked about our story, about us being special?" She nodded hesitantly, still crying. "Sometimes people say mean things because they're afraid of what they don't understand. Because our family is different from what they're used to, but that doesn't change who we are or what we feel for each other." But she faltered, her voice trembling. "What if they're right? What if you give up on us like everyone else did?" The words struck Ryan like a punch to the stomach behind him. He heard Jessica inhale sharply. "Never," he stated with a conviction that surprised even himself. "I will never give up on you or Sophia. You're my daughters now, and that means forever. No matter what happens, no matter what people say, family means no one gets left behind. You promise with all my heart." Aya's hug nearly knocked him over, and he held her tightly, ignoring the tears now staining his own cheeks. Over her shoulder, he saw Jessica discreetly wiping her eyes, back in the car with AA finally asleep in the back seat. After the emotional ordeal, Jessica broke the silence. "You need to deal with Kevin. I know, and we need to talk about us." Ryan kept his eyes on the road, his heart racing about you being more than a social worker. "Yes, it's the truth," he admitted. "You've become part of our family. Jessica, the girls adore you. And I?" "No," she interrupted gently. "We can't not. While I'm assigned to the case, it would be unethical and could compromise the entire adoption process. What if you weren't? The silence that followed held 1,000 unspoken possibilities back home. They found Monica trying to soothe a fussy Sophia who started crying the moment she saw Ava. She missed her sister. Monica explained with a kind smile. She's been looking for her all afternoon. Ryan watched as Ava ran to embrace Sophia, who immediately stopped crying and attempted a few wobbly steps toward her big sister. The bond between them was magical to behold. "I'm going to call Kevin," he decided, exchanging a significant glance with Jessica. "But I'm not going to his club if he wants to talk. He can come here." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I'm done hiding. The girls deserve a father they can look up to, not someone living in fear of the past." Kevin arrived at 8. That night, after AA and Sophia were already asleep, his fake smile froze when he saw Jessica sitting beside Ryan in the office. "This is a private meeting," he began, but Ryan interrupted him. "No, it's not. Jessica stays." In fact, he picked up a thick envelope from his desk. "This is for you." Kevin opened the envelope, his eyes widening as he read. "You've lost your mind. This is a full confession about Project Aurora. You're admitting we stole the code, falsified data." "Yes," Ryan confirmed calmly, "along with proof you were as involved as I was. I'm going public with everything tomorrow at a press conference. You'll destroy everything we built. Years of work, billions in market value." "No." Ryan smiled, picking up a framed photo from his desk, AA and Sophia in the garden, laughing at the camera. "I'm building something new, something better, something my daughters can be proud of." "Your daughters?" Kevin let out a humorless laugh. "They're not even really yours, just some charity project gone wrong, a pathetic attempt to clear your conscience." Ryan stood up so abruptly that his chair toppled over. Jessica placed a gentle but firm hand on his arm, stopping him from doing something he'd regret. "Get out of my house," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Tomorrow at 9. I'm telling the world the whole truth. What you do with that is your problem after Kevin left slamming the door so hard it made the pictures on the wall shake. Jessica remained silent for a long moment. You know what this means for the adoption process, don't you? Ryan nodded. It'll complicate everything, but the girls deserve the truth, and I deserve to be the man they believe I am. I'll have to recuse myself from the case, Jessica said softly. It would be a conflict of interest now, I know, and afterward, Ryan finished venturing a small smile. We can see where this goes, a sharp cry from upstairs interrupted them. Sophia, her cry different than usual, frightened, urgent, check the cameras. Ryan exclaimed, rushing to his laptop. The security system showed Sophia, standing in her crib, crying while Ava tried to comfort her through the bars. She might have had another nightmare. Jessica commented, already running for the door with Ryan. They reached the room to find Ava, whispering comfort to her sister. It's okay. Sophia, Daddy's coming? He always comes. Ryan felt his heart swell at those words. He picked Sophia up, settling into the rocking chair that had become his favorite spot in the house. Ava Ahmed immediately snuggled next to him, as she always did. Want me to tell you a story? He offered gently. Rocking. Tell the one about when you were little. AA requested about your first day of school. Ryan exchanged a quick glance with Jessica, who still stood by the door. She nodded slightly, smiling, then moved to leave. Stay, he called softly. Please. She hesitated a moment before coming in, taking a seat on the small sofa by the window. Moonlight streamed through the glass, creating dancing shadows on the unicorn and butterfly wallpaper. It was my first day at the new school. Ryan began, his voice gentle enough to lull both Sophia and Ava. After I went to the orphanage, everything seemed scary. As he told the familiar story, Ryan watched his daughters, because that's what they were now. Regardless of any legal document, Sophia had stopped crying and was now sleepily playing with the buttons on his shirt. Ava struggled to keep her eyes open, but she smiled whenever he reached her favorite part of the story. Jessica watched them with an expression he couldn't fully decipher. There was tenderness, certainly, but also something deeper, something that made his heart race when he finished. Both girls were asleep carefully. He stood and laid Sophia in her crib. AA protested sleepily as he carried her to her bed. I don't want to sleep alone, she murmured. You're never alone, he assured her, tucking her under the covers. We're all here always in the hallway. Jessica waited. The faint light gave her face a soft, almost ethereal glow. You're good at this, she commented. Being a dad, I'm still learning, he admitted. But for the first time, I feel like I'm doing something truly important. The press conference tomorrow will change a lot of things. He finished, but some things will never change, my love for them. And he hesitated. My feelings for you. Jessica took a step closer, stopping just inches away. I'll submit my recusal, first thing in the morning, and then she smiled. We can write our own story. Ryan watched as she walked down the stairs and out the front door. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, the press conference, the consequences of his revelations, the uncertain future of the adoption process. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid, because now he had something worth fighting for, bigger than any corporate empire or any shameful secret from the past. He had a family, and that he discovered was the true meaning of success. The first sign something was wrong came at breakfast. Sophia, who was usually bright and babbling in her attempts to form words, was quiet. Her normally sparkling eyes dull and tired. Ryan noticed she barely touched her fruit puree. Unheard of for the little foodie, she's warm, Monica commented, placing a hand on Sophia's forehead. I think she has a fever? Ryan immediately set aside his tablet, which was open to headlines about his public confession regarding Project Aurora. The news could wait how high. Monica already had a thermometer in hand. 1 to 1.3 DFV, and climbing. I'll call Dr. Martinez. Ryan decided, grabbing his phone across the table. AA watched with worried eyes, forgetting her own breakfast. Daddy, her voice was small, uncertain. Sophia is going to be okay. Right, of course she will, Princess, he assured her, though he felt a knot in his stomach as Sophia began to cry, a weak, painful cry. Unlike her usual strong wails, the pediatrician arrived within 20 minutes, by which time Sophia's fever had spiked to 102. 2° Oris. The examination was quick and tense. Pneumonia, Dr. Martinez diagnosed gravely, and it's progressing fast. She needs hospitalization immediately. Ryan felt the world slow down, hospitalized at her age. We can't take risks. The fever is too high, and her lungs are already compromised. She needs IV antibiotics and constant monitoring, everything. After that happened in a blur, the ambulance, the rushed trip to the hospital. Sophia so small and agile on a stretcher that looked way too big for her. Ryan barely registered that he was still in his pajamas by the time they reached the pediatric ER/AA. He suddenly remembered turning to Monica, who held the girl's hand. "School. I'm not going to school?" AA declared, her voice shaky, but resolute. "I want to stay with Sophia." Ryan knelt before her, seeing the fear in her eyes. For the first time. "Princess, Sophia needs special treatment. Now you won't be able to stay in the room with her." "Then I'll wait outside," she insisted. "Please, Daddy, I don't want to be." Away from her, the daddy hit him, as it always did, straight in the heart. But before he could respond, his phone vibrated. It was Jessica Ryan. "I just heard I'm on my way. How Monica called me. You'll need help with hospital paperwork," and she hesitated. "Kevin is on another live interview right now." Ryan stared at the phone, then at Sophia being wheeled into the pediatric ICU. Ava clinging to his hand as if her life depended on it. Let him say what he wants. Ryan decided, "I have more important things to worry about now." The next 48 hours were a nightmare of high fever antibiotics and beeping monitors. Ryan didn't leave the hospital except for a quick change of clothes. When Jessica insisted, Ava also refused to go home sleeping on a waiting room couch. Despite Monica's attempts to make her leave, she needs a proper bed. Monica argued the second night she needs to be near her sister. Ryan counted watching AA's fitful sleep. "She's already lost her parents. I won't force her away from Sophia too." During one of those sleepless nights, Ryan found Jessica quietly working on her laptop in the corner of the waiting room. "So you should rest," he said, sitting next to her. "Look who's talking," she replied with a tired smile. "Besides, I'm almost done with the report for the judge with all the chaos around Project Aurora, and Sophia's hospitalization is the adoption process." In jeopardy, Jessica shut her laptop, turning to him. "I won't lie, Kevin is causing a lot of damage, but I'm also receiving dozens of statements from people defending you, former employees, business partners, even some families. Your charity initiative has already helped." "Which charity initiative?" "The one you announced 3 weeks ago, the AA and Sophia Foundation." Ryan blinked in confusion. "But we haven't started operating yet. Everything's still on paper." Jessica smiled. "Apparently some people took your ideas and ran with them. 3 orphanages have already implemented your tech mentorship program, and 2 children's hospitals have received anonymous donations to set up sibling-friendly spaces, just like you suggested." Before Ryan could process that information, an alarm sounded in Sophia's room. In seconds, he was at the door, watching helplessly as the medical team scrambled. Her fever had surged again, dangerously. Hi, Daddy AA's sleepy voice came from behind him. "What's happening?" Ryan turned to shield her view, but it was too late. Ava had already seen the medics crowding Sophia, the machines beeping the frantic motion. "No," she whispered and then screamed. "No, Sophia." It took Jessica and Monica to hold AA back as she struggled trying to get into the room. Ryan felt paralyzed, torn between comforting AA and wanting desperately to be at Sophia's side. "Go," Jessica ordered. "Still restraining AA, she needs you in there. I will take care of AA." The next few hours were the longest of Ryan's life. The medical team stabilized Sophia, but the scare had been huge. When he finally emerged into the waiting room, he found AA curled in a corner, refusing to speak to. "Anyone, Princess?" He tried to approach, but she shrank away. "Go away." Her voice was rough from crying. "You promised nothing bad would happen to us. You promised we'd always be together." The blow struck Ryan painfully. "AA, everyone lies," she continued, silent, tears falling. Everyone promises things. And then Ryan sat on the floor beside her, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough for her to reach him, if she wanted. "Do you know why I lied in the past?" He asked softly about Project Aurora. Ava didn't reply, but he sensed she was listening, because I was afraid I wasn't good enough, of losing everything I'd built. I thought lying would make me stronger, safer. But do you know what I learned? She glanced at him sideways. I learned real strength is in admitting our fears, in asking for help, when we need it, in trusting the people we love. Like Jessica, Ryan gave a small smile. Like Jessica, like Monica, like you and Sophia. But what if AA's voice trembled? What if Sophia doesn't get better? Then we'll face that together. He promised, I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen, Princess. But I can promise I will never give up on you. I will never stop fighting for our family. Slowly, like a frightened little animal, AA inched toward him until she was in his arms. I'm scared, she whispered me too, he admitted. But do you know what gives me courage? What, seeing how strong you are, how you take care of your sister, how brave you are when things are tough at that moment. Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway with a small smile. The fever's going down, she announced. Sophia is responding to the antibiotics. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Ryan felt Ava relax against him for the first time in days. Can I see her? AA asked tentatively. The doctor nodded for 5 minutes. She still needs rest in the room. Sophia was peacefully asleep, her breathing still a bit labored, but much improved. Ava approached the hospital crib cautiously. Hi, baby sister, she whispered. I really scared me. You know, Ryan stood by the doctor, feeling a hand on his shoulder, Jessica's touch, tomorrow's headlines. She said quietly, showing him her tablet. The headline read, Adams Tech CEO skips crisis meeting to care for sick daughter, stocks plunge public approval, SES. I don't care about the stock, he replied, watching Ava softly sing to Sophia. Some things are more valuable than money, Jessica smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. You know, when I started this case, I thought I was just helping 2 orphans find a home. I didn't realize I was helping an entire family find each other. Ryan squeezed her hand gently in the crib. Sophia stirred in her sleep, her tiny hand instinctively searching for something. Ava immediately placed her favorite unicorn plush, one she carried everywhere, beside her sister, so you won't feel alone. She explained, and there, in that hospital room at 3 a.m, Ryan Adams realized that sometimes our greatest trials don't come to break us, but to show us what we're truly made of. Kevin could try to destroy his reputation. The investors could jump ship. The whole world could doubt his intentions, but none of that mattered, because there, in that moment, he was not a billionaire, CEO, or a man with a controversial past. He was just a dad with 2 amazing daughters and a heart big enough to love without measures or conditions, and that he realized was more than enough. It was during breakfast that Ryan first noticed something was off with AA, normally chatty. Even on the sleepiest mornings, she barely touched her cereal. Her eyes fixed on the bowl seemed distant, lost in thoughts too heavy for a 6-year-old princess. He called softly, "Not hungry." She just shook her head, pushing the bowl away. Next to her, Sophia, now fully recovered from pneumonia, tried to get her attention by tossing bits of banana, but Ava barely reacted. She's been like this for days, Monica whispered to Ryan when he joined her in the kitchen. Barely talks, doesn't want to play, even with Sophia. She's different. Ryan frowned. Recalling the past few days since Sophia's hospitalization, something had changed in AA at first. He chalked it up to fear or the lingering shock of almost losing her sister, but now, in hindsight, he realized it was deeper. Dr. Chen called Monica, continued referring to the child therapist who had been seeing AA. She wants to move today's session up to this morning. Why, she didn't say, but she sounded concerned. Ryan met Jessica in the hallway of Dr. Chen's office. 2 hours later, she had insisted on being there, even though she was no longer officially the social worker on the case. How was Ava on the drive over? Jessica asked. Watching the girl through the waiting room window, Ava sat in the corner, hugging her unicorn plush like a shield. Quiet more than usual, Dr. Chen greeted them with a serious expression. "We need to talk about AA's last session. Did something happen?" She started drawing something disturbing. The therapist showed them a series of drawings spread across her desk. They all depicted the same theme: a car. A dark road, figures that appeared to be her parents in all of them. There was a small figure in the back seat surrounded by what looked like red tears. "Nightmares?" Ryan asked, his heart tightening. "Not exactly." Dr. Wren hesitated. "Ryan, I believe Ava is carrying a very heavy burden, something that needs to be addressed in a safe, controlled environment. That's why I asked you to come in today." When Ava entered the room, she looked smaller than ever. Her eyes, usually so expressive, were downcast, avoiding contact with everyone. Dr. Chen began gently. "Remember what we talked about last time, about secrets that hurt our hearts." Ava nodded slightly, hugging the unicorn tighter. "Do you want to tell your dad what's been making you so sad?" The silence was deafening. Ryan could practically hear his own heartbeat, an undefined fear growing inside him. Ava began, her voice so low it was barely audible. "I killed them." The world seemed to freeze. "What do you mean, Princess?" "It was my fault," she insisted, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. I spilled my juice. Mommy turned around to help me clean it. Daddy looked back for just a second. Just a second. The rest came in a rush of words and sobs, how she had insisted on having juice in the car even after her mother said no, how she pretended the cup was an airplane, how the sudden movement made her drop it, how her parents got distracted for just a moment. Ryan stood paralyzed. Flash images of the accident that police described flashed in his mind, the car skidding on rain, flipping multiple times, parents killed instantly, the two sisters miraculously protected in the back seat. He finally managed his voice, shaking. "It wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was," she cried truly, raising her voice for the first time since entering. "If I had listened, if I hadn't been bad, they'd still be here. And now, Sophia," almost her voice broke into sobs, "I heard everyone I love." Ryan moved instinctively to hug her, but she shrank away. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Now you're going to hate me too. You'll send us away." "Never," Ryan declared, his voice steady, despite the tears in his own eyes. "Never, you're my daughter. Nothing will change that. But I killed them." "No, sweetheart," Dr. Chen intervened gently. "It was an accident. Accidents happen, even when we're very careful. But if I hadn't, what if the weather wasn't bad?" Ryan added. "What if the tire hadn't blown? What if 1,000 other things were different?" "Havers, look at me." She raised her eyes hesitantly, finally meeting his gaze. "You were a child in the back seat of a car, a child being a child. What happened was a terrible tragedy. But it wasn't your fault. It never was. How can you be sure? Because I know you?" He answered simply, "I know your heart. I see how you care for Sophia, how kind and loving you are. No one with a heart as beautiful as yours could be to blame for something like this." Ava's sobs intensified, but this time when Ryan opened his arms, she didn't pull away. She threw herself against his chest with enough force to nearly knock him over. "I miss them so much," she cried, "and I'm so scared of what, Princess, of losing you too, of losing Sophia, of being alone again." Ryan held her tighter, his own childhood fears echoing in her words. "You'll never be alone again. I promise." The session lasted another hour. With Dr. Chen carefully guiding the conversation, Jessica remained silent, but her supportive presence was palpable when they finally left. Ava was exhausted. Falling asleep in Ryan's arms in the car, Jessica drove while he held in the back seat. "How did we not see this sooner?" he asked quietly. "Childhood trauma is complicated," Jessica replied. "They bury things in ways we don't always understand. The important thing is we know now. Now we can help her at home." They found Monica trying to calm an agitated Sophia. She missed her sister. The nanny explained she's been fussy all morning. Ryan gently laid on the couch, but before he could move away, she grabbed his hand. "Don't leave," she murmured drowsily. "Never," he promised. Sitting beside her, seeing her big sister Sophia started squirming in Monica's arms, wanting down the moment her tiny feet touched the floor. She toddled determinedly over to the couch, va. She called her first clear word, surprising them all. Ava opened her eyes, and for the first time in days, a small smile appeared on her face. "Come here, sis." Ryan helped Sophia onto the couch, where she immediately snuggled between them. The weight of AA's revelation still hung in the air, but there was also something new, a beginning of healing, perhaps. "You know," he said softly, "when I was little after my mom died, I blamed myself for a long time." Ava looked at him curiously. "Why?" "Because on the day it happened, I asked her to take me to the park. She wasn't well, but I insisted. I thought if I hadn't asked, it wasn't your fault," Ava said immediately. Ryan smiled through tears. "Exactly, Princess, just like it wasn't yours. But how do we know? How can we be sure? Sometimes we're not," he admitted. "Sometimes all we can do is choose to believe we deserve to be loved. We deserve to be happy even when it's hard." As if understanding the gravity of the moment, Sophia placed Aya's hand on her own cheek. The same comforting gesture AA always used to soothe her. "Va," she repeated, smiling with her few baby teeth. Hava laughed through her tears, and the sound was music to Ryan's ears. "Weck need help," he said, looking at Jessica, who stood in the doorway. "Lots of it, and you have it," she replied, coming over to sit on the arm of the couch. "We all do that night." After the girls finally fell asleep, Ryan found the drawings Ava had made during therapy. Looking at them now, he saw not just pain and guilt, but also the incredible bravery of a child willing to share her heaviest burden. "She's going to be okay," Jessica said, handing him a cup of tea. "Kids are more resilient than we think." "I know," he replied, taking her hand because she has something I didn't have at her age. "What's that?" "A family, people who love her unconditionally, who will help carry this weight until she's strong enough to realize it was never hers alone to bear in the girls' bedroom." Sophia slept peacefully in her crib, while Ava, for the first time in many nights, seemed untroubled by nightmares. Clutched in her hand against her chest was her unicorn plush. Not as a shield, but as a reminder that even in the darkest nights, there's magic in a family's love. And so on that quiet night, while the city slept outside, a small family began its own healing process. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but they would do it together, because sometimes the heaviest secrets, once finally spoken, become lighter to carry, and sometimes only by facing our most painful truths can we truly begin to heal. The family therapy room had walls painted in soft blues and greens, decorated with framed children's drawings. Ryan watched as AA settled onto the plush carpet, surrounded by therapeutic toys. Dr. Chen had carefully chosen Sophia in Ryan's lap, absent-mindedly tugged at his tie. "Today we're going to try something different," Dr. Chen announced, sitting on the floor with them. "AA, will you tell us a story?" "Using these dolls?" AA looked wily at the dolls, a small family of posable figures, a toy car, miniatures of trees and houses. "What kind of story? Any story you want?" The therapist smiled gently. "Sometimes it's easier to talk about hard things when we pretend it's just a story." Ryan's heart ached as he watched Ava pick up the parent dolls so carefully, as though they were made of glass. "Once upon a time," she began softly, "there was a family driving home on a rainy night." The story came out slowly with pauses and quiet tears. But this time something was different when she got to the part about the accident. AA stopped, and then Dr. Chen gently prompted, and then AA frowned, as if wrestling with a realization. A lot of bad things happened. At once, the heavy rain, the blown tire, that other car suddenly appearing, was the spilled juice. The only thing that happened, Ava shook her head slowly. No, there were a lot of things. Like when Sophia got sick, it wasn't just one thing that made her go to the hospital. Right? Ryan held his breath, recognizing this crucial moment. That's right. Dr. Chen smiled. Sometimes accidents are like puzzles with many pieces. No single piece alone causes everything. But AA hesitated. What if I hadn't spilled my juice? What if it wasn't raining? Ryan offered gently. What if the tire was brand new? What if that other car hadn't been there? Ava, remember when Sophia was in the hospital and I blamed myself for not noticing she was sick sooner? But Dr. Martinez explained that sometimes bad things happen even when we do everything right. It's different. Ava protested, but her voice was less certain why. Because she stopped confused. Because you're still angry at yourself, Dr. Chen completed softly. And sometimes it's easier to hold on to that anger than let it go. Sophia chose that moment to wriggle free of Ryan's lap and crawled to her sister, offering her favorite rattle a toy. She never parted with Va. She grinned, pushing the rattle into Aya's hand. The simple gesture shattered. Something in AA tears began to flow. But they were different now. No longer tears of guilt, but tears of release. I didn't mean it, she sobbed. I didn't want any of that to happen. Of course you didn't. Ryan pulled her into a hug. Sophia's still in between them. You're the most caring person I've ever met. Princess, your heart is so big. Sometimes I think it might burst from all the love. Inside the session continued for another hour with Dr. Chen, guiding them through breathing exercises and techniques to manage negative thoughts. By the time they left, there was a new lightness in the air in the car. On the way home, Ava asked Daddy, "The hearing is next week, right?" Ryan nearly slammed on the brakes. In surprise, "Yes, Princess. How do you know I heard you and Jessica talking?" She admitted. "Is it true that a judge will decide if we can stay together forever?" "It's true," he said honestly, "but I want you to know something. No matter what happens in that courtroom, you and Sophia are already my daughters in my heart. Nothing will change that, even after you found out what I did, especially after learning what you've been carrying." He gently corrected. "Your courage in sharing something so painful only made me more certain." We're a family. When they arrived home, they found Jessica waiting with a concerned expression. "The judge wants a full psychological evaluation before the hearing," she told them as soon as the girls went upstairs with Monica. "With everything that's happened, he thinks Ava isn't emotionally stable." Ryan finished feeling his stomach sink. "Not exactly." Jessica hesitated. "Actually, he wants to evaluate you, Me. He wants to be sure you're prepared to handle her trauma, that you have the emotional resources to support her healing." Ryan laughed without humor. 6 months ago, my biggest concern was the company's stock price. Now you're a father," Jessica finished, touching his face gently, "and a wonderful one. I'm afraid I might not be enough." He admitted that I won't know how to help her the right way. "That's exactly why you're exactly what they need," came a voice from the stairs. It was Dr. Chen, arriving for a home follow-up. "How so?" "Because you admit your fears," she explained. "Because you're willing to learn to grow to ask for help. You know how many parents can't do that." Before Ryan could answer, a joyful shout came from upstairs, followed by a laugh. They hadn't heard in weeks. AA was laughing. They all hurried to the girls' room and found a heartwarming scene. AA sat on the floor surrounded by old photos Monica had found at the Mitchell's home. Instead of crying, like before, she was showing the pictures to Sophia, telling her stories. "Look, Sophia, here's Mommy holding you when you were born. And here's Daddy, teaching me to ride a bike. Va? Happy?" Sophia clapped, making Ava laugh again. "Yeah," she said, glancing at Ryan in the doorway. "V's happy." That night, after the girls were asleep, Ryan found Jessica in his study, surrounded by documents for the upcoming hearing. "How are we doing?" "Honestly," she smiled, "better than you think. Judge Peterson is known for valuing families that seek professional help, that show real commit to emotional healing. And the fact that he gestured between them, in love?" She finished with a grin. "I've already clarified my position to the court. I'm no longer the assigned social worker, and our relationship started after I stepped away." Officially, Ryan moved closer, taking her hand. For years, I thought success meant more money, more power, more control. Now I know. True success is hearing AA's laughter after weeks of silence. It's seeing Sophia take her first steps. It's having you by my side as we build something real. Something that matters. A small sound at the door interrupted them. It was AA hugging her unicorn, plush nightmare. Ryan asked softly. She shook her head. No, I just wanted to say goodnight again when she came for a hug. Ryan noticed something different in her eyes, a peacefulness he hadn't seen in a long time. You know, she whispered, I think Mommy and Daddy would be happy. We found you and Jessica and Monica. I'm sure they would, Princess. And I think she hesitated. I think they wouldn't want me to be sad forever. Ryan hugged her tighter, tears in his own eyes. No, they wouldn't. They'd want you to be happy to live a life full of love and joy. Like now. After Ava returned to her bed, Ryan and Jessica remained silent for a moment, absorbing the impact of that brief conversation. We still have a long road ahead, Jessica commented. Yes. Ryan agreed, but for the first time, I think we're truly moving forward. Not just AA, but all of us. Through the baby monitor, they heard AA whisper to Sophia. Good night, sis. Tomorrow will be better, and the day after that, even better, I promise. And for the first time in a long while, everyone believed that promise. The morning of the hearing arrived with a gentle mist covering the city. Ryan adjusted. His tie in front of the mirror, his hands trembling slightly with the anxiety he tried to hide. The reflection showed a man transformed by the events of the past months, not just on the outside, but in his very essence. Daddy AA called from the door, looking lovely in her navy blue dress. Are you nervous? He turned, smiling as he saw his daughter clutching her beloved unicorn. Plush a little bit, Princess. Are you? She nodded, stepping forward for a hug. What if the judge doesn't like us, Impossible? He replied, kneeling to meet her eyes. He'll see what I see, a family that loves each other more than anything. Breakfast was a mix of tension and hope. Sophia, oblivious to the nerves, babbled happily in her own language, while Monica tried to get her to eat without making too much of a mess. Jessica arrived carrying the final reports in an air of professional calm that helped soothe everyone's nerves. Dr. Chen was extraordinary in her assessment, she remarked, sitting down with them. Judge Peterson has been briefed on all circumstances, including, she glanced at AA, who was playing with her cereal. The courthouse was packed when they arrived. Familiar and unfamiliar faces filled the benches. Adams' tech execu, Ives' reporters, even Kevin, seated discreetly at the back. The surprise came when Ryan's attorney informed him that Kevin had requested to testify. He can't sabotage the process, Jessica assured Ryan, noticing the worry on his face. In fact, I think you'll be surprised. Proceedings began with the usual formalities. Judge Peterson, his gentle eyes peering over thin-framed glasses, first heard the official reports. Then came the most nerve-wracking part, AA's private conversation in his chambers. Remember what we said, Ryan whispered to her. Just tell the truth. The next 20 minutes felt like an eternity for Ryan. Sophia, sensing his tension, kept calling him Dada Sad. When Ava returned, her eyes were red, but there was a small smile on her face. The judge followed with a neutral expression and called Kevin to the stand. Kevin's testimony shocked everyone. Instead of accusations, he told a story of transformation, not just Ryan's, but his own. The man I see today, Kevin declared, isn't the same young guy who would do anything for success. Ryan Adams did something I never thought possible. He chose love over power, family over business, truth over profit, one by one. The testimonies followed. AA's teacher described how she had become an advocate for classmates who were bullied. The pediatrician detailed the family's dedication during Sophia's hospitalization. Monica spoke about the daily little victories she witnessed. Finally, it was Ryan's turn. He stood adjusting his tie one last time, and instead of addressing the judge, he turned to his daughters. When I was a child, he began, I learned the hard way that family isn't guaranteed. I spent years building walls, convinced that success and power were all that mattered. Then, on a dark night, I found two sisters who changed everything I thought I knew about love and courage. He looked at Ava, whose eyes brimmed with tears. You taught me that true strength isn't about never falling, but about getting up every time, about facing our hardest truths with bravery, turning to Sophia. "And you, my little warrior, showed me that joy can be found in the simplest moments, a smile, a new word, a tight hug." Finally, he faced the judge. "Your Honor, I'm not just asking for legal custody. I'm asking for the chance to keep being the father they've taught me to be, to continue our journey together, because it's not just them who need me. I need them." A profound silence followed. Judge Peterson removed his glasses, cleaning them methodically as he weighed everything he'd heard Mr. Adams. He began, "In 30 years on the bench, I've seen hundreds of adoption cases, each unique, each special, but I've rarely seen a family demonstrate such commitment to mutual healing and growth." He paid meaningfully. AA's revelation about her biological parents' accident is deeply moving, but what strikes me is how this family chose to address it with honesty, courage, and unconditional love. Ryan felt Jessica squeeze his hand. Therefore, the judge continued, "I grant permanent custody of Ava and Sophia Mitchell to Mr. Ryan Adams on the condition they continue therapeutic support." As needed, the courtroom erupted in applause. AA ran into Ryan's arms, tears of joy now streaming down her face. Sophia, not wanting to be left out, started shouting "Dea" until Jessica brought her over. "It's official," Ryan whispered, hugging his daughters. "We're a family forever." The celebration at home was intimate, but joyous. While the girls played in the yard, Ryan found a moment alone with Jessica. "There's something I need to ask you." He began guiding her to a quieter corner. "Ryan, you've been with us from the start." He smiled, taking her hands. "You saw our family born, grow face storms, and come out stronger. The girls love you, I love you, and I can't imagine our story continuing without you." He knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Yes," Ava shouted, running up with Sophia close behind. "Say yes, Jess?" Jessa laughed through tears. "How could I say no to this family? There's always a choice, right?" And smiled. "But I hope you choose us?" "Yes," she replied, pulling him in for a kiss as the girls cheered 1,000 times. Yes, 1 year later, Ryan's office looked different now. Among the awards and charts were AA's drawings and Sophia's early attempts at scribbling letters. The unicorn plush held a place of honor on his desk to bring luck in business, as AA insisted. At home, the family had grown. Jessica was expecting their first child. Thor, the golden retriever, had learned not to chew on Sophia's toys, and Ava was writing her first children's story for the AA and Sophia Foundation. "Sometimes I still can't believe it," Ryan commented one evening, watching the girls sleep. Believe what Jessica asked, resting her hand on her growing belly. How one dark night on a deserted road changed everything. It wasn't the night she smiled. It was your choice to stop to care, to love. He kissed her gently, silently, thanking all the choices that led them here. Because sometimes the best families aren't the ones we are born into, but the ones we choose to build day by day with love, courage, and the certainty that no matter what happens, we'll always have each other. And in the end, that's all that really matters. Later that night, after the house finally grew quiet, Ryan found Ava still awake, gazing at the stars outside her bedroom window. "Can't sleep, Princess? I was thinking," she replied softly. "Do you think they can see us, Mommy and Daddy?" Ryan sat beside her on the windowsill. "I'm sure they can, and I bet they're very proud of the amazing girl you've become sometimes. I still miss them," she admitted, "but it doesn't hurt as much now. It's more like a warm kind of missing. That's how it should be." He smiled, pulling her close. "The love we feel for those who've passed on never goes away. It just becomes something that makes her stronger from the crib." Sophia let out a small, contented sigh in her sleep. As if agreeing, Ryan watched his daughters, one growing wiser and stronger, the other blossoming in joy and curiosity, and felt his heart overflow. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, fear, and deep pain, but each challenge, each tear, each moment of uncertainty lead them here to this moment of peace and belonging on the bedroom wall. A new frame hung beside the Mitchells' photos, a picture of the whole family, Ryan, Jessica, Ava, Sophia, and Thor, all smiling. Under the sun at a recent picnic, it wasn't a replacement of the past, but a continuation of their story. New chapters written in ink, of love and hope. Daddy Ava called sleepily, heading to her bed. "Thank you for stopping that night." "No, princess," he replied, tucking her in. "Thank you for teaching me how to be a dad," as he gently closed the door. Ryan thought of all the dark nights yet to come, all the challenges still ahead. But now he knew they would face them together. Because sometimes the greatest miracles begin on the darkest nights, and the greatest loves are born in the most unexpected moments. And so, in a house filled with love, high above the city, a family forged by destiny, and choice continued their journey. It wasn't a happily ever after, it was something far better. It was a happy new beginning with the promise of many more chapters still to come.